Rep. Young has House Bill 4617, and if you wish to come testify, we'd love to have that.
Well, greetings, Mr. Chair and members of the Oversight Committee. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to testify on my bill, House Bill 4617. I think I'm far enough away from everybody. Okay. House Bill 4617, which is now tie-barred to House Bill 4383. And it was during my review of House Bill 4383 and the testimony of the bill's sponsor that I began to really question why incarcerated persons were exempt from the definition of persons, people and entities allowed to access FOIA, FOIAble information, and asking questions. I was told that these concerns kind of stem from incarcerated persons having the ability to spend all day FOIAing information. And so I said, okay, I get that, but what if we place some limits on their ability to FOIA that information? And then the response was, well, we pretty much just decided to leave it as it was and not change anything. And so I thought, the thing that we do as legislators and lawmakers is amend bills and legislation. We try to make it better. We don't just leave things at the status quo. So I began to do my research and found that with our 50 states that there are probably 9 that have restrictions. And of those 9, like most of them aren't as strict as Michigan is. And so they allow incarcerated persons, the majority of our states allow incarcerated persons to utilize FOIA. And believe it or not, even when talking to criminal justice reform advocates, some of them were even shocked that Michigan exempted incarcerated persons. And so that's why I'm here today. Our current prohibition, to me, kind of feels like dehumanization of the incarcerated. When you tell them that you don't fit in the definition of a person, that's dehumanizing to me. And so we look at them and they exist in a cell with a bed and an uncovered toilet just inches away from one another. What I'm asking is that we give them the dignity of being included in the definition of persons and allow them the access to information pertaining to them and them only, their personal information regarding their case and potentially their children that they still have a legal right to. God forbid any one of us or someone that we love ends up behind bars and lose our personhood. And so thank you, Mr. Chair, for entertaining this legislation and allowing me to have a hearing on it. And thank you to my colleagues for your attention. As I said during my first comments in this committee, everything I do is driven on the love and care that I have for people. And that's what this legislation is at the heart of as well. So with that, thank you. Any questions?
Well, thank you for your testimony. And you referenced the bill as tie-barred to. That's the Legislative Open Records Act that we passed, the expansion of FOIA to both the legislature and the governor's office. And I know you brought this question up in that committee, and I'm happy to see you're following through on that. I believe Representative O'Malley has a question.
I do, and a quick comment. Again, so right now, if I'm incarcerated, I can't FOIA information that could potentially help me with my case, or as you mentioned with family, if there's an issue outside that has nothing to do with my case, but my family has a problem, I can't get information.
That's correct. You cannot, not in the state of Michigan.
I agree with you. That doesn't seem right. And my comment is, Representative, this is the first time I've seen you without your mask. And it's a beautiful smile.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Representative O'Malley.
You are welcome.
I don't sell Representative Hoytinga.
Like you, I was a little shocked when I heard testimony, and that was the first time I had heard about this too. And so I'm glad that you're pursuing this, and I would support this, you know, with some reasonable limits if you guys go further with this rather than just a definition and go further. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Representative Brixey.
I just want to thank my colleague from Detroit for being so thorough and doing your job as a representative in such a thorough manner and catching this, because I missed it. All of us missed it. And as soon as you asked the question, we all started thinking about it. So thank you so much for being such a good representative to bring this forward so that we can right this wrong and give people the ability to seek justice.
Thank you.
And I believe we have someone on Zoom as well. I don't know if you want to sit down or stay up there for his
I'll stay.
testimony.
I'd like
But
to stay.
Daryl, are you on Zoom?
Mr. Siggers, Daryl Siggers?
I think you might be muted. All right.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
Yeah,
there
we
he
can
is.
hear you.
Okay.
Yes. My name is Daryl Stiggers, and first let me say thank you to the chair and the members of the committee. Thank you also, Representative Young, for bringing this important legislation. I served 34 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit. I was arrested in 1984. Was released in 2018 after being exonerated by the Wayne County Conviction Integrity Unit. While in prison, one of the hurdles that I faced consistently was the ability to access FOIA, particularly in my later years when I began to understand the importance of documentation to support any type of litigation or allegation of police misconduct in my case. And so I began to develop and establish a company even then while I was in prison called Legal Access Plus. And what Legal Access Plus does is we FOIA information, the prosecutor's file, police file, and court records on behalf of prisoners. And so, again, when I was inside in the later years, I didn't have access to that information. And so at some point, I filed a Freedom of Information Act through a family member, and I was able to obtain some just vital information concerning my case. And so right now, inmates from all prisons contact me and they pay me to file FOIA on their behalf. And so first, let me just say, if this bill is passed, and I pray that it is, because I think it's worthy and it's necessary, it would essentially put me out of business. But for the greater good, I would be willing to sacrifice that because it is a vital tool that is necessary for inmates. Because I get inmates their files and they find information in there with regard to police misconduct, prosecutor misconduct, and other things. And without this information, they can't properly litigate their conviction. So here I am, innocent, in prison 34 years, and not able to get copies of my prosecutor's file and police file. And upon obtaining these files through other individuals, and it took a task to do that because family members don't have time, they don't know the process, they don't want to do it. And it just makes sense to allow prisoners to do it themselves, because as I said, a lot of information is in these files that they don't have access to. Sometimes police officers withhold information, sometimes prosecutors withhold information. And when you get these files, you will find some of them, they find a treasure trove of information that they can use to prove their innocence. And no greater crime can be committed than to incarcerate someone for a crime they didn't commit and then prevent them from getting documents. Now, I understand there's the concern that inmates in the past, they abused the process. That's why they were exempted. Well, this bill narrowly focuses on information that specifically concerns the inmate and anything regarding his, maybe his parental rights or his child. So I think it's reasonable. And I just hope this committee will grant this bill or approve this bill and make it into law, because I think it's necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. If I may ask, how long were you wrongfully convicted for? How long were you incarcerated?
34 years.
Wow. And what was it eventually overturned your conviction to get you out?
Ballistic identification. We found out that the so-called expert, Detroit Police Department expert, wasn't an expert at all. He had lied and said he had been with the Detroit Crime Lab for 6 years. He said that it took him, you had to be under the apprenticeship for 2 years. We found out that he hadn't, when he did the test in my case, he had only been in the Detroit Crime Lab for 364 days. And I got this via FOIA. This is how we found this out. This guy wasn't an expert. He wasn't even qualified. This guy had all type of criminal stuff in his background and was still allowed. He withheld this stuff from the prosecutor's office. And we found this out through the FOIA process, which ultimately, along with some other things that were uncovered through the Wayne County Conviction Integrity Unit's investigators concerning witnesses and other police misconduct. But the point is, one of the vital documents that led to my exoneration was obtained through the Freedom of Information Act.
Good. Thank you for sharing that with us. I don't see any questions for you, so thank you for being here this morning for that. Thank you for your
Thank you.
testimony. Do have a couple cards to read in that are in support of the bill. They have provided written testimony that will be available to the committee members. Kenneth Nixon, as well as Wolfgang Mueller with the Mueller Law Firm. Both of them are in support of the bill, not wishing to speak, but have provided written testimony. Committee members, I would be prepared to vote on this next week perhaps, so if you have amendments or changes, please get that to us as soon as possible.